Hello. With the release of Cabal Mobile tomorrow, I figured it'd be a good idea to make a little bit of a guide video for what progression is kind of going to look like coming the release of the game tomorrow. Since there's going to be a lot of veteran players coming onto the game and a lot of Filipino players who are going to obviously try to be on the game, there's going to be a lot of race. There's going to be a lot of races for certain things, and I want to try to kind of explain what sort of emphasis you should be putting on in the early game. So this is my level 170 on the PC version. I pretty much stopped playing after I reached 170 because the game, if you're a solo player at level 170, becomes unbearable. Some might even say it gets to that point at like 150. Um, Basically, you're required to have a party at this point or be in a guild with somebody who is able to help you gear up because this game is very grindy, and I mean very, very grindy, as it always has been since the game came out, you know, 15 years ago, whatever it was. So, let's start by talking about gear, okay? So, I'm gonna close this out. Um, so the main thing about gear, right, is that when you complete the level 110, so there's a quest line you get at level 100 to level 110. And that quest line will give you a full set of plus 8 red osmium, sometimes one slot, and sometimes some of them are two slots. This gear set will basically keep you in check or keep you occupied until you get either Sig Metal, which I think a lot of people are going to be trying to grind for Sig Metal in order to farm dungeons, or you start farming for Forcium or Arch slash Pala gear um, at level 155. So Palladium and Arcinium or Archinium, I don't remember how to pronounce it. You can equip at level 155. Um, but this gear set requires a lot of grinding in order to craft it, and it also requires you to complete some pretty high-end content. Um, but with how the mobile version is going to go, people are going to be able to grind these pretty much within the first week, I would think, or within the second week. I would start seeing these go on the market, but they're going to be insanely expensive for a very long time. So for the vast majority of people, I would say it's going to start out with your plus 8 red osmium, um, and then it's going to work up to Sig Metal. And I think a lot of people are going to be building Sig Metal for a while, until they eventually are able to move on to Arch or Pala gear, which are going to be insanely expensive for a very long period of time. So that's just kind of my assumption for that. So just for a quick reference for those who are new to Cabal, um, the order of item grades is as follows, right? So we're mostly focusing on osmium and higher. Shadow Titanium is, I believe, the noob set that you get if you buy it for like $5. Um, and you will get some Shadow Titanium gear from the early dungeons, but most of your gear grind is going to be at um, Shine Guard, which is red osmium grade and higher, right? So Sig Metal is the highest grade of gear that is in the high tier, so you can use Upgrade Core Highs and Force Core Highs. And starting with Forcium, you require highest, and that goes up to Palladium and Demonite, which is ultimate tier. I don't know if we're going to be having Demonite in in the mobile, but that's ultimate endgame, and there's actually a new armor set coming to PC very soon in the next update, so that's going to put Demonite out of commission. But yeah, so that's just kind of reference for that. Now, in regards to epulets, so I think epulets are going to be very, very expensive early on. Epulets are already a pretty rare drop, especially in the early game. So what I expect is to see Sigmetal epulets and rare epulets be extremely expensive. Osmium epulets technically can drop from Tower of the Dead B1F, but it's very rare. Most of the time it's going to be Titanium or Shadow. Still, like, I would expect even these two to be extremely expensive for a long period of time. That being said, I think it's a good opportunity to try to farm for epulets as well. But just don't expect to get a decent epulet for a while. Same thing with boards and bikes. Astro bikes early game are going to sell for insane amounts of money. Unless you're someone who decides to buy them with Force Gems, you're not going to see an Astro bike for a very long time. So, until people start really farming dungeons. So, I wouldn't really worry too much about these two yet, but if you can get an epulet, I would highly think that rare grade is going to be what most people are going to be using for a while. The only reason why Forcium is so cheap on the PC version is because no one needs them anymore, and they drop very commonly at higher dungeons. But yeah. All of these things down here we don't really worry about, but belt, I think the only belt we really want early game is the Belt of Resist, right? Or the dampening belt. There's a couple of good belts. Yeah, Belt of Damp, Belt of Guard, until you eventually get the Chaos Belt. But yeah, I still use Belt of Golden Toad just because I don't have anything better. It's not really that big of a deal. Same goes with, all these other accessories. This is all Chaos stuff that we don't really need to worry about early game. Now, rings. So, rings are very important. So there's three rings that are going to be extremely, extremely popular. The first is the critical ring. As you can see, +1 still sell for 25 mil. On mobile, they're going to sell for probably 100 mil early on. The +1 and +2 rings are going to be very, very popular. Same with the Ring of Luck. Right? So, as you can see, Ring of Luck +2 goes for like 98 mil right now. These are going to sell. These are going to... People farm Tower of the Dead B1F just to get a Ring of Luck or critical ring. And in the beta, people have gotten them and tried selling them for ridiculous prices. So these are going to be very highly sought after items. For the vast majority of people, I would say you're going to be sticking with your Ring of Golden Toads and Ring of Memento or whatever for a while. These will hold you over until you're able to get something better. The other ring that's going to be very popular is HP Absorb and Force Absorb rings. So let's see. Force Absorb. Yeah, so Force Absorb rings early game are very good because of the extra lifesteal that you get. Same with Life Absorb ring. I think actually the +2 and +3 versions are actually pretty easy to drop. You can even get the +1 at an NPC shop. So that will help a little bit. But obviously if you can get a Force Absorb ring, that would be the best situation. But yeah. But the last one is obviously Mega Riff ring. So Mega Riff ring is really, really, really important for a lot of the DPS classes in the game, Blader most in particular. Thankfully, nowadays, and in mobile, I did get a ring drop. Um, it's not too difficult, and especially since you can auto farm dungeons, I expect Megarith Ring to be very expensive early on, but then to quickly go down in price once people start getting Left Tywin and Killian. Um, but if you are playing Blader, Warrior, Gladiator, classes that don't have innate crit rate, you're going to be wanting Megarith as soon as possible. Um, so I expect this to be worth a lot of money early on. But with the quests from Keller, you should be able to farm it. But it is going to take some time. I think a lot of people are going to be farming EOD B1F for a very long time. At least early on. It's going to be the best farming dungeon for making early money, I think. Earrings, obviously, you need a vampiric earring, right? These are going to be the most popular. These are also very rare drops, so don't expect to farm them very easily, but you should try to get them. Again, these are going to sell for a lot of money. Bracelets, until people can start farming Altar of Sienna B1F or B2F. No, B2F, right? B1F and B2F. You're going to probably just be seeing low-grade Bracelet of Fighters or Bracelet of Sages for quite some time. If you can, try to get, a decent plus Bracelet of Fighter, or even just get the one that you can buy from the NPC shop. I'm trying to think of what bracelet. Let's see. So if we go to Bracelet of Fighter. Yeah, so you're going to want to try to get like a +3 or +4, but these are going to be probably really expensive early on. But if not, then just use whatever you have until you're able to farm. Prettius's and Sienna's bracelet, which comes from Altar Sienna B1F and B2F respectively. And then for your amulets. So this is really dependent on your class, but early game, I really like Amulet of Resist. I don't remember exactly where it drops, but other amulets that are really going to be good early game, obviously Amulet of Guard. You can get really cheap ones and really decent ones from the NPC shops. Vampiric Amulet is often a really good choice. This drops semi-regularly from dungeons, but it's still pretty rare. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You really want to try to get an Amulet of Resist or Amulet of Pain. Amulet of Pain, I think they both actually increase your max crit rate. No, just yes, they do. So Amulet of Pain, max crit rate and defense, right? A lot of max crit rate, and then at +4 and higher, you get crit damage on it. Amulet of Resist, you get resist crit damage and max crit rate and ignore pen. So both of these are very, very important to farm early game. And they're going to be very expensive and very sought after. Alright, so that should do it for gear. So again, to summarize, you're going to be just doing quests until you get to your +8 red osmium. Usually the noob sets that you get from the mini bosses are fine. If you get Shadow Titanium gear, you can build that if you want, but you're pretty much just going to be using your +8 red osmium anyway. And then eventually working to Sig Metal, and then working to Forcium, Arch, and Pala. Epulets are going to be rare drops. Just try to get the best one you can. Ultimately, you want to try to get a Palia or Arch one, but until people can start farming them, Forcium is going to be the most popular, Rare is going to be the most popular, and Sig Metal. Just try to get what you get. Don't worry about bikes early game unless you're willing to spend cash out money. They're going to be insanely expensive, but you will want to farm them, obviously, but like every dungeon can drop them. These accessories down here, don't worry about. Rings, just try to use the Ring of Golden Toad or Ring of Memento, whatever you can. Farm up Megarith if you need it, and then get to Killian later on if you need it, or start farming Left Tyrant if you're able to clear FTB2F. And try to aim for a Life Absorber, Mana Absorb Ring, especially if you are able to get Vampiric Earrings. Earrings of Koleth will last you quite a long time until you're able to get Vamp Earrings. Bracelets, Bracelet of Fighter or Sage. Eventually go into Prettius and Sienna's bracelet for AOS B1F and B2F. and your amulet, try to aim for Amulet of Resist or Amulet of Pain. Until then, just use Amulet of Guard or Vampiric Amulet. Okay? So those are going to be kind of the most sought after items and kind of the order. Now, in terms of farming, first things first. Copy of Epiload of Dead and copy of Map Part every day, no matter what. These dungeons drop a lot of upgrade core lows and mediums. And people use these for fail stacks in order to upgrade higher tier gear. And early game especially, demand for upgrade cores is going to be massive. So you're going to make a lot of money from these dungeons here. And they're very quick runs. They're very easy to do. You can only run these once a day per account. So keep that in mind. But if the mobile version is like PC, you can freely mail as much alls as you want between accounts. Very much expect people to run multiple accounts in order to farm money for this. Especially if you're a solo player. But I highly recommend farming these as soon as possible. Otherwise, Chaos Arena 1 and 2 are both very good. Chaos Arena 3 can drop Upgrade Core High and Upgrade Core Highest. I don't recommend upgrading. I don't recommend farming Chaos 3 until, well, maybe it could be very profitable, but don't farm Chaos 3 until you get BM3. That's the first thing. But it might not be worth farming until you're able to get a set that requires highest. Even then, you can use it for a probably good amount of profit, especially early game. So keep that in mind. In regards to DX dungeons, these aren't really worth running. I think the only one that's actually worth running is probably Steamer Crazy or Lava Hellfire. I don't remember. I forget which one is actually worth running, but obviously if you get the premium ones, those are what you should be farming, but early on, DX dungeons aren't really all that great. And eventually, of course, you want to be farming Hazardous Valley hard when you're able to farm it. That's the ultimate end goal. That drops a lot of upgrade cores and can also drop some good Sigmetal stuff as well. I think it also drops Sigmetal Epilogue, if I'm not mistaken. To where you get, yeah, Awakened Hazard Valley, but that's way down the line. For mission dungeons. So, just to recap real quick. Every day, copy of EOD1, copy of Map Part, Chaos 1, Chaos 2. Every day, no matter what. You probably don't need to do Chaos 1 and Chaos 2 that much, because it is kind of slow, but it will give you a good income of upgrade cores to sell for profit early game. So, I would recommend maybe looking into it at least. Alright, so now, let's talk about mission dungeons, okay? So let's actually go to the dungeon menu. Alright, so we're going to go up to... FTB2F, okay? This is probably the highest level dungeon people are going to be able to farm at this point in the game. The three kind of early game dungeons that are going to be early game, I say, that are going to be farmed are going to be AOS 2, IC2, and FT2. And probably Forbidden Island as well for Sigmetal, right? So, firstly, let's talk about the early game dungeons. Lake and Dusk, ignore it completely. Just do the copy. Runa Station, ignore it completely. It's trash now. It might actually still be okay on mobile. I haven't tested it because I think it still can drop Shadow Titanium and Upgrade Core Highs on mobile, but I'm not sure. But your ultimate dungeon to farm early game is, of course, EODB1F. Why is that? Chance of dropping Shadow Titanium. Titanium gear, great for early game farming. Can drop a bike, it's very rare. Vamp Earring +3. +1 Resist Amulet. Crit Ring and Ring of Luck +2. These are the two biggest drops from this dungeon. And, of course, the Mega Ring, right? So, Epulet of the Deads are going to be very, very expensive early game, which means that AFK farming in both in Undead Ground, Forgotten Ruin, and Lakeside are going to be very competitive. Because I think a lot of people are going to want to farm this dungeon early. So just keep that in mind. Especially, it's important to upgrade your crafting so that you can use astral skulls to craft epulets. Volcanic Citadel, I think, will also be another dungeon people will farm early, and that's mostly because of the Shadow Titanium gear drops, as well as also the drops for the rings and the Vamp +3. Other than that, though, EODB1F is just better for money making early on and early on crafting leveling. So, IC1, I will think people will farm IC1 for some good red OSM drops, but mostly for this, the Vamp +5 and the RW3 bike, as well as the upgrade core highs and stuff like that. So I don't know how much people will farm IC1 besides XP, obviously, but we'll see. FT1 isn't really farmed that much, I don't think. Maybe the rune, the HP absorb rune, but besides that, it's not really worth farming compared to IC1 anymore. Like, IC1 is actually, like, completely just negates FT1. So, I wouldn't really bother with FT1 that much. Sienna 1 will actually be very popular because of Prettius's bracelet. Right? This is a really strong bracelet. As well as, of course, Vamp Earring +5, Resist +3. Resist +2 could drop from IC1. Okay, never mind. I lied. IC1 will be farmed for Resist +2, Vamp +5, and the bikes, right? And FT1 can be farmed for that as well. But yeah, Sienna B1F will be farmed a lot for the Prettius bracelet and RW3. I can also drop red OSM, but that's not really that important at this point. You're mostly going to see those drops. B2F, or EOD B2F. This dungeon sucks. There's not really much else to say about it. The only thing you're really going to get from it is Killian Ring, and maybe an RW3 drop, and Resist +2 amulet, but it's not that great of a dungeon anymore. Forbidden Island. This is where you're going to get your Sig Metals. This dungeon is going to be very popular early on for Sig Metals. This is a tough dungeon, though, to do solo, so I expect a lot of people to be run. So I think that early game, we're going to see a lot of parties for Forbidden Island, AOS 2, IC1, IC2. And then later on, you're going to see guild runs for FT2 or for Awakened IC1, right? But yeah, that's just my or yeah, Forbidden Island Awaken as well. Yeah, we'll see that too. That's just my theory crafting right now. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm probably wrong, but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, Forbidden Island's gonna be very, very popular for segmental drops, obviously. Vamp +6s are actually really, really, really rare, so we probably won't see them. But most people are going to be farming this for segmental stuff. AOS 2, 4 CM drops, very important. Most important, though, is, of course, the Sienna Bracelet drops. And Vamp Earring +7. So this dungeon is going to probably be the most farmed, I would imagine, or... Yeah, I would say these three are going to be farmed the most by parties early on. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just my hunch right now, right? So, Sienna Bracelet, very, very important late game item, end game item. That's going to be farmed, right? And then finally, IC2. Well, not finally, but IC2. More Sig Metal. Drosin's Earrings I don't think are that important, but what's important about IC2? Crit damage rune, right? And AOS 2, max crit rate, right? So, very important dungeons that are going to be farmed a lot. And lastly, FT2, 4 CM drops, Vamp +7 again, Left Talent Ring, all very important things. Amp runes, very important stuff. So, yeah. So once people start getting the drops they need from these dungeons, obviously we're gonna see, right, Awakened at Forbidden Island, maybe Outpost, but I don't really know. Um, and yeah, it's just gonna kind of go from there. Awaken IC1, um, B2F Part 2, B3F. That's actually a type. That's a funny typo. But yeah, B3F is going to be endgame stuff, obviously. So I hope that gives kind of a guide, of how progression is going to kind of look. I think it's just going to be a lot of farming. I think it's going to be a lot of farming in EOD1, a lot of farming in IC1, a lot of farming in Altar of Sienna, Forbidden Island, stuff like that, until people get geared enough to start running FT2, Awakened Forbidden Island, Awakened IC1 for the Arch drops, right? For the Arch drops and stuff like that. But we'll see. We'll see if people actually start running. We'll see if people actually start upgrading Forcium or just skip Forcium entirely and just focus on Sig Metal until they get Archer Polygear. But, if you're not a whale, expect to be running Sig Metal or even Forcium for a long time. That's pretty much it. Not super informative, but or I try to, be as formative as possible, I guess. Just kind of what we can expect to see. So we'll see what happens when the game comes out tomorrow. I'm very curious to see, what people are saying is going to be good to farm. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I might still be playing the PC version too, because the mobile version is going to be extremely pay to win. But we'll see how it goes.